Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, Dorfromantik, Block Party, and Emily Neat from Osprey Games. This is Staying In.
We've been having some bonkers weather. I think that's how the Met Office describes it.
Yep, just lots of bees all over the Great Britain map.
Today the weather is going to be bonkers and lots of thunder and lightning, which I love. I love a good thunderstorm. I think they're incredible. But it's been the first proper thunderstorms where I've had to try and explain to a 2-year-old what thunder and lightning is. And I think being a dad for the first time, the thing that has shocked me the most has been how difficult it is to explain certain concepts to a child that you just take for granted now, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, so are there like analogies that you have to use to kind of explain?
Well, no, yeah, so there's like analogies I need to use for thunder, but just for another example, like he knows certain numbers and he sees like a speed sign and it'll have a 2 and a 0 on it and he'll go, that's a 2 and a 0. And then I have to try and explain to him how 2 numbers together makes a bigger number. And it's only when you think of it like that it just sounds like the weirdest thing you've ever had to, and like he just can't take it on board. He doesn't understand how when 2 numbers are put together, they make another number that's different to the 2 numbers that are, but you're not adding them, they're just together. But then when it came to the thunder, like obviously I was explaining to him how when lightning hits, it heats up the air around it, causes it to expand and whoosh away, and that's the explosion sound that we hear, my son.
Were you wearing a flat cap?
That didn't work as well, so we just said the clouds are banging together, and
That's lovely. The clouds are jamming.
The clouds are jamming together. But it did make me have a flashback to when I was a child and having the same sort of fear and unease about thunderstorms. And I remember the analogies that my parents used for me. Now, I grew up, Emily, in a very sort of religious house, very sort of Christian, which I realise now is actually a great parenting hack because you can just blame everything on God.
Yeah, it's handy.
And so thunder was, the angels are bowling again.
Oh, it's quite adorable.
What, like lawn bowls or 10-pin?
No, like 10-pin bowling, because when there was a flash of lightning, that was a strike. God's got a strike. Well done.
And if you count, you can work out how far the striker was away. Yeah.
So it kind of turned thunder into this like spectator sport when I was a kid, and then the other one, which was great, which was God's taking the bins out.
Oh, I like that.
I like that. That's a lot nicer than he's just moving his furniture around, which makes him just sound like he's constantly feng shuiing.
Yeah, and there's that slight sort of, that if I was a Foley artist and wanted to make thunder, my first bet would be getting a wheelie bin and rolling it along the ground. Like there's a sort of similar.
God's sorting through his recycling.
God's not washed his jars.
Yeah. I definitely think I just had the story of the 2 clouds going together. I don't think that changed until about GCSE. I don't think I knew the science of it before then.
No, I mean, it kind of makes more sense in a way. But when you really think about it, it should be happening all the time.
Yeah.
But it does sound like a momentous event. It sounds more plausible than air just rapidly moving away from a heated rod of electricity.
Yeah.
I like that kind of mythologizing of the everyday to kind of make sense of it. That's the Greeks were really good about that, the ancient Greeks, in terms of where things would come from. I really did like that.
It's not quite putting your bins out though, is it?
No. Although admittedly, Sam, yeah, can you imagine that? Yeah. We go from like the pantheon of gods to like the UK. Just lack of imagination.
Yeah, there's a reason why we stole most of the gods.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
But didn't steal them that well. Well, Zeus is putting his bins out.
Yeah. Mm. Good for him. So, thanks for joining us today, Em. It's good to have you with us.
It's really nice to be here.
Yeah, fantastic. Now, in preparing for this show, I was we were sending some emails back and forth, and you said something to me that I know that me and Kris are going to be thrilled to hear about when we're talking about what kind of things you're up to, what would you like to talk on the show. And you mentioned that this Father's Day weekend, you were going to watch all of the extended editions of Lord of the Rings.
Oh
back to
my
back.
word!
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
That's half a day.
2 questions: did you do it?
Yeah, of course, absolutely, all the way through.
And was it genuinely back to back, or was there like a tactical nap?
No, there was no tactical naps. No, we let the credits roll, so there's a little bit of downtime for people to get drinks, food. But no, we I think it was just like 12 and a bit hours in the end. I can't say whether we watched them, all the way through exactly, concentrated the whole time, because that's a lot of hours of film. But I mean, the first one, sure.
Oh, no, yeah. But as soon as the Ents turn up, you're just like, right, okay, yeah, chill out. We're here for a bit, guys.
There's a lot of bits of it, and you're like, was this in the original? Is this the extended cut? I can't tell them apart anymore. But this seems quite a long-winded way around this, but no, it was great. We did sort of like themed cocktails all the way through.
Oh, okay.
Oh, wonderful.
So that we had like something to kind of focus as we went through.
Go on. So, what were your what cocktails do you have when you're watching Lord of the Rings? Was there one for each film?
There's one for each film, and then we had a little like themed shot in each film as well. Which
9 shots for each of the.
Yeah. Every time a member of the Fellowship dies.
Oh yeah, we had drinking games that if you had a certain character, anytime that character killed anyone, you had to take a drink. Unfortunately, one of my friends had
Helm's Deep.
Yeah, crazy. Yeah, I think I had Legolas. It was great. But no, we had
and they tell you how many they kill as well.
Yeah, I was going to say, isn't there that one scene where him and Gimli are just like, I've got 42?
Yeah, that still counts as one. Yeah, that was it. Yeah, it was good.
Yeah.
We had, I think, the ones to probably recall were we had Sexy Sauron on the beach. I mean, why not?
We've all got an image.
We had what was the second one? Oh yeah, Aragorn Star Martini. Again, vaguely themed.
These
Little bit of Afalas plant in it.
Yeah.
First one was Mirabor, which was kind of like iced tea with gin, which was quite pleasant as a starting kind of cocktail.
Nice.
Little blue vodka shot of Sting when Sting first turns blue.
Gosh, this is really well planned.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, maybe less in practice than theory, but
like all great quests.
Yeah, quite. Yeah, but it helped to shape the kind of the movies and give a little bit of something else going on. So that was fun.
That's so interesting because I'm drinking now a tea that is designed for particular classes within role-playing games, D&D.
Ooh.
The one I'm drinking is a Buccaneer, which wasn't what I thought it would taste like. Actually, I thought when I heard Buccaneer,
what did you think a Buccaneer would taste like?
I thought something that would be a bit smoky because I'm thinking like gunpowder, like a gunpowder tea, maybe. Like,
oh right, okay, yeah.
That's what I was imagining. This is actually a really nice kind of almost blueberry, kind of fruity, kind of almost like a rooibos tea. It's really nice, and we got sent these by Honey Badger Games. Yeah, so we've spoken about them before. We met them at Aircon in Harrogate a few months ago now, actually, and they've got a new set of teas coming out called Tea Party. And we'll put a link in the show notes as to how listeners, if they want to back this, they can online. And essentially, it's literally what you've just talked about there in terms of your Lord of the Rings marathon. It's them trying to create a tea that works with every single type of class that you'd have for an RPG event. And the way they kind of thought about it was like, well, okay, what would this character drink when they're on their travels? And it's a really lovely, unique kind of way of doing it.
So rather than trying to encapsulate the character themselves, it's what would that character be?
Yeah,
drinking?
and like I think because I'm a games master at the moment, and I really enjoy having a blank character sheet to kind of develop and build characters. And I'm always into slightly more abstract ways of developing a character that aren't just picking from a list of attributes or qualities or rolling a dice, say. So, having a cup of tea and going, oh, this tea makes me think of this kind of person that would drink that tea. You know, there are the certain teas I don't drink. And then sometimes somebody will say to me, I drink this type of tea. I'm like, oh, really? I never had you down as that. In the same way that when I tell people I'm a Scorpio, they look at me really weird. For whatever the hell that means. But it really does work, and there's nothing really artificial in the flavors. They spent a lot of time thinking about the intricacies of how certain flavor profiles can be paired with a particular character class. So one we got in the post, another one was the Games Master, which was this wonderful kind of smoky chai. And you just think about that, that commands a degree of authority, doesn't it? Smoky chai.
Absolutely.
Whereas the Ranger, linking to the Aragorn thing you were talking about before, Anne, is a light mint, which kind of works because you've got to be light on your feet. You're on the road, and it almost feels like you've picked this mint somewhere in the bushes.
Yeah, I was going to say,
you've stuck it in a kettle. So I'm really quite liking this. And I know, Sam, you and I, when we game, we like to theme. Generally with music, we do it.
As much as possible,
with music, we'll have some music on. In fact, when we played Lord of the Rings Journeys of Middle-earth the other day, we actually turned off the music in the app and just put our own on.
Yeah.
So I think, this sensoramic kind of approach to kind of gameplay, I think is really, really nice. And I think next time I'm going to do the Lord of the Rings marathon, I will totally be trying to find a way to pair that with something that is sensorial, whether it be taste. Maybe I'll make my own lembas bread, which I did do once. I made my own lembas bread for a friend for their... Who the hell was that for? I can't remember. It was for somebody's birthday. I made us lembas bread.
They just went on this massive... They just made it for him.
We went on a walk. That was it. It's their birthday. We went on a walk, and I made lembas bread.
Oh, sorry.
And I ate most of it.
Yeah. Now, that either tells me that it was terrible and you just ate because it was the food that was the only food you could pick, or it was not enjoyed by...
Oh, it was enjoyed, but spoilers, it was shortbread. But the rest
I thought you'd say bread. Okay. That does sound more edible. On a walk.
Almost like
shortbread does have slightly magical properties.
A bit like a Kendall mint cake.
So
yeah, it's almost like that, really. It wasn't like a piece of bread. It was like it was shortbread, and I wished I'd kind of wrapped it in something like a banana leaf or something like they do in the films, and it looks really more appealing in that way. Should have thought, I took it in Tupperware, which wouldn't have really worked, would it? Really, be like the coffee cup in Game of Thrones.
But I'm glad that this kind of like trying to like bring, I guess, if I was a marketeer, I'd say, bringing board games into the fourth dimension, or that I think cinema companies and even people like the BBC and stuff have been trying to find ways of like enhancing your experience with a product, with a thing, whether that's like going into a shaky seat and having like steam and water sprayed at you at cinema. Well, it's not like steam. It's like fog and smoke.
Yeah,
not like geyser.
Yeah, not like second-degree burns while you're watching Fast X.
I did one of those, and the smell, I think it was Captain America, and the smell of like green grass from a specific scene. Now, when I watch that film back, I can still smell that. So I do think that's
so
something
interesting.
Really sticks with you.
That's interesting.
It's like a Proustian moment.
I remember back in the late... It must have been in the late 90s or something like that, where Comic Relief did a scratch and sniff evening, and you could go down the post office or somewhere, go to Sainsbury's, you get your little scratch and sniff card for £1, and then they did all these comedy sketches, like I think they did like a Blackadder or something like that, and it was really, really clunky thinking back to it, but the magic of it when I was a kid was incredible, because it was kind of like At this moment, scratch off panel number 5. And it would just be a scene where Blackadder's like taking off Baldric's socks and he scratched a little panel. And then you get the smell of sewage.
But notoriously, the challenge they've always faced is that you can't remove instantaneously the smell that was there before. So it's about that consolidation of odours, isn't it, really? That's the challenge they face, unless they turn on like a massive fan in between each smell.
I think what's great about the teas that you're drinking, Kris, is like how seriously it's been taken. And I think that, and I know like, you're talking about like, you know, having cocktails and making it part of the evening, but that's what makes things like that so special and enhance them. Like if I think about, you know, I remember when Resident Evil 7 came out and Capcom released a candle that smelled like, I think it literally smelled like a damp basement, or like it smelled like fresh meat or something like that. There was like, and it was like, get this candle now to enhance your game playing experience. And it's just like, when it's not a marketing push, it can actually be something that really
run yourself a bath.
Play.
Just. Oh my god! And I bet you regretted buying that big Roman candle. Yeah, oh my word.
Yeah, and then my wife got them mixed up when she was having a relaxing evening.
Spa day.
And all the flies started gathering
and you're stuck, you know, playing Resident Evil with the smell of sandalwood.
So which of the teas is your favourite so far,
Probably
Kris?
the Ranger for me, because I'm a big fan of mint tea, and I think that really speaks to me more. It's a bit cleaner, a little bit simpler, and I mean I am enjoying the ones I'm drinking at the moment, definitely. But in terms of the character class that I'm drawn to and the tea, it's that definitely the Ranger. And we've had a few of them before, and we've spoken about on the pod. You know, we've had the Barbarian, the Assassin, which have been lovely, lovely teas. But I'm going to be backing this definitely, because my partner's a big fan of tea. She's got like millions of tea flavours, and it has encouraged me to be a bit more adventurous and maybe think about, well, okay, if I like this tea, maybe actually I should give this class a consideration. Maybe if I'm going to be doing an RPG, rather than perhaps, you know, just going for the ones I usually go for. So you're with Osprey. How long have you been with Osprey for?
9 years.
Wow.
Yeah, quite a long time. I sort of started on we have a military list as well, Osprey Publishing. Lots of people know it for the military history titles. Yeah. And then, we launched Osprey Games in 2015. And I started working on them about sort of 2016, 2017. So a while, actually, yeah.
Amazing. And how did you get into the industry? What was your way into it?
I mean, I wanted to work in publishing, essentially, to begin with. Book publishing was the route in. And then I've always been a massive nerd, so it was quite easy to fall into the game side as the opportunity arose.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, as I said, it's a pleasure.
Yeah, it really is. So thank you so much for being here.
Especially after spending years and years for, you know, speaking to you.
Yeah, I do recall... the 2020 sending you a little missing reinforcement card, sending him to the front lines of the pandemic.
Oh, yes. That was great. That was one that oh no, what happened to that one? It got wet, I think.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, that was the great summer where I lost lots of board game pieces. Yeah.
Mostly down your decking.
Yeah, I lost loads down the decking. But yeah, I was just trying to make the most of the summer. But so, Kris, you've got a great memory for when things were on the show. When did we talk about Inkling?
Inkling. Oh, it's just going through the annals of my memory here.
It was in June. It was back in June 21, as in June 2021.
Yes.
So like 2 years ago.
It was episode 129, I believe. 129. Yes, where we also talked about Call of the Sea.
What the sea? Oh, the that Cthulhu point and click adventure. Well, I guess we have to be slightly open and honest, and this is a pure coincidence. This wasn't fabricated in any way. I'm not that clever or smart, but I have to say that M, who is joining us on this edition, is from Osprey, but as I said, it's complete coincidence, and everyone knows how much I love Inkling. I mean, I think the greatest representation of how much I love Inkling, it's the only game I've ever had to ask for a replacement score pad.
Oh wow, you got through it all.
Wow.
That's impressive. Yeah. That's good. We want to hear that. Absolutely.
Which is something that, like, when you get a new board game, you look at that score pad and you just know, never get it.
No.
Especially if it's double-sided.
Do you like riffle through it like next to your ear, like, and just say, yeah, it's all here.
You count all the pages.
Like it's money in a suitcase. Yeah.
Do you keep them?
Do I keep the score pads? Oh, do you mean like
in the bottom of the box,
ones?
like the used ones? Yeah.
Yeah, I do, because for two reasons. First, I like a reminder about how bad I am at board games. Two, it's just nice to have a sort of a nice thing of, I remember that time when me and Kris played that game. And also, I think it's really nice when, if I'm giving up some games, like giving them to charity or to a friend or selling them on or whatever, whenever I've received a board game that's got used score notes inside of it, I quite like it. I quite like the idea that I'm getting something that's been loved, that's been played.
Definitely.
And so I do keep them. I don't think I've kept the Inkling ones, only because they would fill up the whole box if I played it.
Do we need to explain what Inkling is, or re-explain?
Yeah. So really, I should get Em to do it.
I was about to say.
Works for Osprey, but
I'm more than happy to. Yeah.
Go on, Em.
It's a 3 to 6 player word game, and essentially you've got these sort of shapes of words, letters in front of you. And throughout the course of the game, you're going to be trying to use these shapes to craft words and score points off the card that you've got. And you're going to get points for sort of other people guessing what those words are. But what's kind of sort of unique and what's interesting about it is that actually you're not just trying to play those letters as the letters that they appear. You might have a B and you might actually use another card to cover the straight line on it and then sort of rotate it so it can be an M. So you're constantly trying to be a bit more creative. So rather than being a word game that relies on knowledge of words or specific kind of, trying to just make the most out of what letters you've got, it's actually forcing you to be a bit more creative with it. Yeah. I think that summarizes it quite quickly, but it's great.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Yeah, I could play Inkling all day, and the reason why I bring it up is that it's the game that came to mind, the first game that came to mind when I played Block Party from Big Potato, and we've spoken about Big Potato tons on the show. Like Sounds Fishy, Chicken versus Hot Dog, Herb Mentality, blah, 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 blah. They're great. And so Block Party is a game that reminded me a lot of Inkling, but just with several different twists. The main one being that instead of making words, as quite brilliantly described, you're instead building objects using little blocks. So each player gets a list of words, and then one player is designated the guesser for that round, and everyone gets a chance to be the guesser, and then the game ends. So as Em was describing, Block Party, like Inkling, is a game all about creating something out of nothing almost, and once you've created something, someone else is going to try and guess to see if you're right. If they guess right of what your object is, they get a point and you get a point. But I think where Block Party kind of shines and where it's sort of different, offers something different to Inkling, is the fact that you're very, very limited in the time that you've got to make the things, and also very limited in the resources that you have. But really what makes Block Party very interesting is that each round has an objective that kind of governs how that round is going to go, or shapes the round in a certain way, which helps you score more points. So that objective is something like the person who uses the most blocks will get an extra point, or the person who uses the least blocks will get a certain point, or a person who makes something that is the most colourful. And this objective card does another thing where it not only denotes sort of like a general sort of scoring aspect of the game, an additional way to get points and a certain challenge when it comes to creation, but it also denotes how long each round is going to last. So unlike Inkling, where you've kind of got infinite time to turn yourself slightly crazy trying to make the word washing out of, you know, random shapes and squiggles, like this gives you like any time from like a minute to 30 seconds to create what you want to create. So once the guesser has sort of flipped over the objective and you've picked a word and you kind of got your head around what you're going to create, the guesser sets a time limit and off you go. And then, Kris, I think this is what you would love about this game most, is then it's a competition to get the blocks from the middle of the table.
Oh no.
Like you don't have your own like little like squared away little collection of blocks. Everyone's competing for the same sort of contested resources.
So if you've got carrot, say, and somebody else, if you've nicked all the orange blocks, Sam,
yes,
I'm stuffed.
Yeah.
Right. So I just need to make the outline of a carrot then, you know, something that is carrot shaped but isn't going to look like, say, an ice cream.
But and you know, it's great because it says it in the rules, like don't be a grabby goose or something like that. Or
is that what your parents would say to you in your religious upbringing?
But there's a general sort of group social sense as well in the room of like, you know, no one's just going to put their hand around all the resources and just pull them towards them. You are just encouraged to take one at a time, and that's it. And it makes those opening moments of the round so stressful but hilarious, and really ramps up the pressure of it, especially if you're like competing, as you said, Kris, if you're competing for a particular colour, that's going to make it really obvious what it is you're making. But really what the like objective cards do that frame the round is ensure that there's not enough time and there's not enough resources to really make anything remarkable or make a creation that's too easy for someone to guess. So that means that you, like an Inkling, when it comes to someone to guess, you have those same joyous moments around the table where the guesser has to pick something that is a psychological horror of what's been left apart on the table. So what unfolds then is three magnificent things. Like either it's the appreciation of an incredible piece of art, or the magic of two minds behaving on the same wavelength out of anywhere. Like, oh yeah, of course it's a mirror ball. Or you are able just to get the magic, or you're able to guess correctly from what is like an actual utter mess, like on the table. Like it's just got that same, and I don't know whether it is because of the blocks aspect, it's just got that same childlike joy that comes from building little creations and trying to be as creative and intuitive with those little blocks as possible.
Okay, you're making gestures with your hands like little tiny little like field mouse.
Yeah, because the blocks are really tiny.
I'm about to ask, is it quite fiddly with the blocks? Is it quite fiddly?
It can be if you're trying to build something that's quite tall. So if like the objective for the round is trying to build the tallest thing, like, and you don't have to go for the objectives if you don't want to, but like one of mine was like the Eiffel Tower. So it was so I tried to like build it upwards. It was like the Eiffel Tower, and the objective was like build the tallest object, and I was trying to build something tall, and it didn't go round. It didn't. No one guessed what it was.
No.
I think I had a chance to play this, and I think that I actually really like those challenges because I think,
cool.
Particularly with like building them high, because I think the inclination is to take the safe option and just do them kind of like flat. But when suddenly it's high, you're like, oh, actually, I am going to try and build a high heel. And I'm somehow going to work out how I'm going to have the heel separate to it. And just suddenly you get to have this kind of creativity in it that otherwise it could be quite, you could do it, it's just one layer of blocks. I love that, making everyone just trying to compete to just get it a little bit taller. So almost dexterity angle to it.
Is this a game you see yourself coming back to often, or is there a particular circumstance in which this game is preferable to play than, say, at other times, really?
I think it's a really good one. like when you just want something quite light, and it's got this sort of it's got quite a friendly vibe. And Sam mentioned the kind of like everyone kind of scrambling to try and get the cubes, but everyone was that rule of one at a time. So everyone's sort of feeling like they want to just try and grab handfuls, but they're being very polite and they're grabbing one. But it's a little bit of fun. Like we played, I think, sort of 2 games of it back to back, and it was just really easygoing. It's not, it's not one I'd play every day for sure, but it's just really light, and it worked with a really different range of people as well.
Can I ask, is there a minimum player count? Because I don't know how this would work as a 2-player game. For you, is there a minimum player count that works best?
Interestingly, it does play 2 players, and there's a special co-op mode for 2 players.
Oh, I'd love that.
So basically, you're still playing the game, but the idea is that the rules are slightly differently, where you're trying to work together to complete a series of missions to get around the board. So rather than competing against each other, because in a 2-player game that you might be tempted to try and make your stuff a little bit too abstract and it would just go nowhere.
Yeah.
Like neither of you would score any points any round because it just wouldn't work anyway, because if you're making really good stuff, you're both getting 2 points around for guessing, and only one of you would be making, I don't know. Anyway, how they've done it is there's a co-op mode for 2 players, but as Emmy said, like, this game really sings the more people that you've got playing it, and the more varied age ranges I think that you've got playing it as well, because like Inkling, what makes this game great is when you truly see how crazy or bonkers someone that you love or that you're friends with or that you work with actually is, and you like kind of see an insight into their world and like how they think and how they see the world. It's like, that is not a train, John. I don't know what you thought it was, but that is not what a train
So it's like a Rorschach test.
Yeah. Yeah. But that's why block parties are really good. And I'm not saying this because Em is here. I think in terms of that sort of style of game where you're creating something out of nothing, Inkling is just exceptional. But Block Party does a really good job of providing a different sort of view on that, a different way of presenting that.
Speaking of blocks and bricks, this is really opposite, actually. We're on this kind of building trajectory.
I've done well.
I know. I've got a new subscription. So for a while, I signed up to a board game subscription. A wonderful company called Rent, Shuffle and Roll, based in Scotland, and wonderful facility where you kind of sign up for a monthly subscription, a bit like a streaming service. And then once a month, I look forward to it. I get an email saying, it's time for you to pick your games, Kris, for this month. And I pick my games, and you can kind of filter through by player count, type of game. And then they'd arrive in the post in a box. And I would get the tape inside to take the box back up so I could post it off backwards, post it off back to them afterwards. And for a while, that was my kind of fix. But I got to this point where I just wasn't having enough time to play the games I rented. So I've kind of switched to a service now called Brick Borrow. Because
stop, Emily. What do you think Brick Borrow is?
I'm hoping it's not a building firm. I'm hoping it's going to be something game adjacent.
Yeah, someone's going to turn up to Chris's house in a few weeks and gone, right?
Yeah, block party for grown-ups. Literally like point work.
I mean, if Big Potato were looking to make a big version of
like Pub Jenga,
I mean, the health and safety for that might be disastrous. As I'm there trying to build
the tallest Eiffel Tower. Yeah, definitely. So thankfully, there's no bricks or mortar involved with this. Really, no cement, none of that. This is a Lego subscription service.
Ooh.
Which, if I was somebody trying to create a company, the last thing I would probably want to create as something to rent out would be Lego, because what if somebody loses a piece? Do I then have to count all of the pieces of Lego afterwards to check? How does this work? And so this is a company based in the UK, and there's a monthly subscription. Unlike some of these kinds of rental subscription services, I can keep the Lego I rent for as long as I want. I'm still paying monthly, but I'm not on the clock, say, to complete the set if it's something that's particularly complicated. And I've gone for the lower kind of pay band, which is around $9.99 a month. And I should say you pay £4.95 on postage on top of that, which includes to you and from you. But you can keep the Lego for as long as you want, really. There is a wonderful kind of setting you can kind of go in for, which is the mystery set, where you literally don't know what's going to turn up. It could be
that's cool.
It could be something very simple, or it could be Hogwarts, I don't know. But you've got this wonderful website which tells you all the stuff that's available. There's quite a range of stuff, really. Because I like building Lego, but what I don't like doing is just leaving it fully assembled around my house, because I just don't have the space. So to have a facility where I can build it and take it apart, put it back in a bag, and then it doesn't have to go in my loft. I'm just posting it back, and then a new lot can come in. It's just great for me. Absolutely brilliant. And we got our first box through the door the other day, which was like a vase of flowers that you make. Like,
I've seen those.
Really, really good. And that's the thing. You're online thinking, oh, is that going to be difficult? But actually, that's not the point. It's actually been this lovely little activity for us to do, where we're sat there and just watching kind of this kind of alchemy occur, where these bits of plastic, which, you can recognise bits of being, oh, that must have been a car bonnet on a different set, suddenly become the petals of this flower opening up. And we brought out an actual vase and we slotted them in that. And people would come round and just do double takes thinking it was a bouquet of flowers. But over the next few days, once we felt we're done with them, we'll take them apart.
Once the petals start falling off.
Exactly. Put them back in the bag, and then I will take the label that's already inside, stick it on the box, and ring Royal Mail to come and pick it up. And then I will order my next set.
So I think the thing with Lego for me that I've never really not understood, but I don't know. It's just, and you've done a lot of Lego sets now, Kris. It's like I can see the appeal of something like a jigsaw, where you know what you're making, you've got all the pieces to do it, but there's a puzzle there in terms of figuring out where the pieces go. So is the joy of putting these things together and doing Lego, is it the joy of just taking yourself away from the world and creating something, even if someone's telling you bit A onto bit B onto bit C onto bit D? Or is there something else that makes that process enjoyable?
I mean, it's the reason why I tend to be drawn to board games that have a landscape represented there. There's something spatial there, really. So much of my life, like most people's lives and their jobs, when you create something in your job, it's always connected or always enmeshed or interlinked with something else. It doesn't exist necessarily as an entity in itself. It's always got lots of other moving parts, lots of other people connected to it. To have something that sits on my table that has been built by me from scratch and exists completely abstracted, and it's there as this entity, is a wonderful thrill that I don't get necessarily elsewhere. Like, yes, I made that. I did it relatively quickly. Yes, there's something quite meditative in following a set of instructions. There's that sense of inevitability that doesn't always happen when I'm making stuff, say, in my job. So it offers a degree of control at times when the world can be quite chaotic and unpredictable, really. Except, as we found the other day, when there were two little green round bits that we couldn't find, pieces that were missing. But then that was a lovely life lesson. We're like, okay, I'm not going to sweat it. It's not my set, it's their set. We'll just let them know. And that's it. That's absolutely fine.
I've really liked the sound of it. I think Lego's great fun. I completely see the appeal of it, but not everyone has space to have, a Lego Death Star just sitting in their living room. And it's nice to be able to do that activity without having to have, just big plastic sculptures everywhere, which are a nice reminder, but they do really take up space, and they're hard to clean.
Oh my gosh, I can imagine. Yeah. I mean, can you imagine having to buy a separate Hoover attachment just for your Lego?
I'm not sure how much.
I mean, there probably is one.
I don't know how well the brick borough can appreciate. I can't actually give you all the pieces back because they're inside a little vacuum cleaner that I bought specifically.
Yeah, Henry's had them.
Yeah. I mean, I'm already getting itchy about the 2 little green bits of Lego that have got lost in your house somewhere, Chris.
No. They never arrived because we very carefully.
Oh, right, okay.
So everything comes.
Are you sure?
Yes, I'm positive. So everything. So usually when you've got these big Lego sets, so I've got a massive 1989 Lego Batmobile, which spoilers is all black bricks pretty much. So usually what happens when you've got a big Lego set is they divvy it up into like 6 or 8 bags. And okay, we're doing bag 1 for this particular section. The only wrinkle when you've got secondhand Lego is everything's in one bag. And it's like one of those sealable Loctite sandwich bags. So everything's in this, and you're like sloshing it around, everything's in this one bag. So we painstakingly poured it into kind of separate bowls, making sure nothing pinged off in different directions. So we were...
You were there in your white scene of crime suits.
I don't know if this infuriates you more, Sam, but we also had extra pieces in there that weren't part of the set.
No.
So... but that was fine. That was absolutely fine because it wasn't my Lego.
Okay, yeah.
And it still looks really nice. It wasn't like a key component was missing, say for example.
No.
So it's a bit of a lucky dip because if the only drawback with you being able to keep the Lego sets for as long as you want is often the really good sets are very difficult to get a hold of. But there's a really strong selection of stuff on there, genuinely. And
is there I mean there probably literally is the holy grail, but do you have a holy grail of Lego sets? Is there something that you've always wanted to build?
It's just literally appeared on the radar. You probably know what this one is. It's Rivendell.
Yeah,
the
nice.
Lego version of Rivendell is not long been in circulation. That's not there on their it's not available yet there, but for me, I'm drawn to architecture, so buildings in a nice structure. For me is what I quite like, and Rivendell would be, I think, lovely. Again, as you were saying, I'd love to build it. I couldn't own it because that would take up pretty much a core of my living room, I think. As beautiful as it is, I just don't think I could justify having it up in the house, really. But I'd love to build that because a little bit what you were saying, Em, about the grass in Captain America, I think that would make me... Because there's so much love that's gone into trying to reflect the set that was used in the films. Mm-hmm. I think even down to the point, Em, where if you lift up the Council of Elrond table, there's like the Eye of Sauron underneath it, like a lovely little Easter egg they've made out of Lego.
Oh, I love that.
So it's got lots of little Easter eggs in there. So I think when I rewatch the films, I would see that scene, which is a very famous scene, and it would make me have such positive associations from building it.
How would you feel about taking it apart again afterwards, though? How would you go methodical or just take it apart?
Methodical. So I did this with my Batmobile a couple of years ago. That took almost as much as building it, but it was really relaxing. It was just so lovely. And yeah, I've only done like a month of this so far, so I'm going to see how it pans out. But I think it's just such a lovely thing to have from the comfort of your own home, really.
I'm not going to assume that you've heard the show before, but if you did, you would have known that we have a small section on it where we talk about we don't necessarily have the staying in awards as such, but certain games or books or films might get a certain recognition from us in a odd sort of way. So we have breakfast games, the famous list of staying in breakfast games to breakfast to, and we've also got what are the other categories we've got? Chuck 'em in your bag games.
Yeah, patent pending in terms of the title. Still not set on that title, Sam.
Yeah, just games that you just chuck them in your bag, and we also have games to read to. Previous mentions include Euro Truck Simulator, Power Wash Simulator,
all the simulators.
All the simulators, but I have a new one to add to the list, everyone. It's a game called Dorfromantik, and I know that me and you, Kris, played this one morning when we were both very hungover.
Extremely hungover. I mean, that's a new category in itself, isn't it? Hungover games.
Hungover games. But it's a wonderfully light video game where all you're trying to do is put down these little hexagonal pieces that have certain details on. So they might have a bit of a forest, a bit of a lake or a river or a train track, or maybe some housing. And you're just trying to create not necessarily the best habitat, not necessarily the nicest looking habitat. You're just really just trying to match different sides of the habitats with other sides. So match buildings next to buildings, match forest next to forests, and match rivers up to rivers. And there's an element of the game which is basically like high score chasing. Like every time you sit down and play, you're trying to beat your own high score, and you do that either by creating something, as I said, where the tiles and the pieces match the areas around them and match the features around them as much as possible, or you're completing certain objectives. So, say, example, getting a area of your landscape which is made up of 32 houses, or getting an area which is like 52 fields all connected together, and trying to make those runs last for as long as possible, because you're limited to the amount of tiles that you have access to. And it's just one of the most relaxing and joyous puzzles, because it's not much of a puzzle. At no point are you really reprimanded for, that tile's in the wrong place. You know, it's not like Carcassonne where there are literally no places where you can't put a tile. There are places where if you put a tile, you can therefore no longer complete an objective, but you're never told off for putting a tile where you would do. And it might be that you run out of tiles a bit sooner because you've just been putting them willy-nilly all around the place. But what Dorfromantik does, which is exceptional, and why I love it, especially as a game to read to, is once you've kind of created this space and got a high score or whatever, then it immediately switches to something called creative mode, where you can pick and choose the tiles that you want and then change the orientation of everything that you've got in place at the moment. So it's like this experience where you just like are trying to create something to some rules, and then you get rid of all those rules, and then you just try and like titify it and like embellish it a little bit, make it how you imagine this little world that slowly comes to life actually is.
Hang on, didn't they when we were at Aircon, there was a board game version of this on the tables there, and you ummed and ahed about buying it.
Yeah, because I go on, Emily.
No, I mean, I was going to say, you ummed and ahed around it, but actually I was very fortunate to see a copy of it the other day in our local board game cafe. And it's so, because I didn't know the video game beforehand. I was only really familiar for it because of the Spuriaris nomination. And I thought, okay, we'll have a go. And it's really interesting hearing you talking about it. And that feeling is really similar to the board game. Surprisingly so, I think.
Okay.
So I think,
that's really good.
Like the video game, it's tile placement. You're still trying to, I think it's 1 to 6 player, so it's cooperative. It kind of feels like Solo Plus, if you know what I mean. It's that kind of, you're doing it together, right, but you're still very much, that solo feeling. And you've got these tasks to complete. So the first 3 turns, you're going to be placing these tasks down, and you're going to be revealing point scoring tokens on those task tiles. And then that's going to tell you how many matching types of terrain, like you've mentioned the different kinds of terrain, you've got to match those to the edges of the tiles. So you're trying to, for example, if you were trying to score up a task for a field, for forest, for example, you turn up, you've got to score 4 of those. So you've got to create a network of connecting forest within that area. And you mentioned that you're not reprimanded in the way that you place things, and it's quite similar in the board game. With the exception of railway lines or streams, where you have to connect those, so they have to be fitted. You can't kind of block one of those routes. Otherwise, you can place the different. So you've got like your grain, your villages, your forest, your pasture. You can kind of fit them anywhere you like, but you kind of score more points for placing them in sort of collections of things. And it's something that kind of is actually a kind of legacy-like game as well. So a kind of green legacy, I guess. That kind of you can reset it all afterwards. So you're scoring up. You're just trying to get a high score after each game, but that allows you to kind of progress along a campaign track, which will then allow you to open little boxes that have new sort of challenges and new like tasks for you to achieve, different tiles and achievements. So you've kind of got that. That's what you kind of just described. You haven't got the kind of creative mode, but you've got that kind of progression.
And can I ask, what's the setup like for it? Because obviously an advantage of the video game is the setup is minimal. Like, what's it like for the board game version of it?
So straightforward. It's all hex tiles. You have your landscape tiles, and you've got your task marker tiles. You're going to remove 3 of the landscape tiles, put those back in the box, and then you're just going to stack them in piles. And you're just going to be turning over, revealing tiles. Whenever you have fewer than 3 task markers out, when you complete them, you score them up, and you remove the little task marker that's active. As soon as you have no longer got an active one, you're going to reveal a new one. So you'll always have 3 in play at any time to score up. And whilst you've got those in play, you're going to be drawing and revealing landscape tiles to then fit around them. So it's super good. I think we played, 3 games in about an hour and a half.
Wow.
Like it's really quick turnaround.
How I think the thing that I love about the video game, and I think the thing that sort of, in terms of if I was to pick one over the other, and you can tell me if I'm right or wrong, is just how evocative the video game is, and how when you place stuff down, it starts life as this inanimate tile, and then you place it down and suddenly there's this like lovely satisfying pop that it makes. And then suddenly the tile like springs to life. So birds start floating around the forests, and trains start trundling up and down the tracks, and boats start meandering their ways through the rivers. And you can zoom in and out of the landscape and move around it, and you can start to imagine what these towns would be like, and you can start to see like, oh, that house is there, and they're right next to a field, so that must be like, there must be some farmers out there, they're living their little life out there, and this is the train station that takes them into town. And it's like, it's so wonderfully evocative, and the soundtrack is incredible as well, actually. Like how I think the thing that I love about tile laying games is the picture of the city, of the place you build after it. And so how evocative is that sort of experience as the game of Dorfromantik? Because in the video game, it's like exceptionally evocative. Like, obviously you've not played the video game, but how did it feel like when you completed the landscape?
I think you get some of that. I think the artwork on the tiles is very, very sort of sweet. It's quite, lots of different kind of little sort of creatures on it. A little bit like, do you remember like King Domino has all the little different scenes happening on the different tiles? It's got slightly that kind of vibe. Yep. So it's not, I mean, I think Dorfromantik is probably a really good one. We were talking about earlier, the idea of like listening to music would make it more immersive. I think you'd get more of that feel of the video game by doing that. But there is a kind of a push and pull, because you want to score up something, but actually you want to have your kind of grain fields around your village. There's it doesn't push you to do that, but once you've finished your city, you've got through your landscape tiles, you do look back at, this is what I've kind of created throughout it. I don't think it quite gets the same level that you get with a video game. Obviously, it's not, just different medium, but I think it does kind of nod to it.
So this is nominated for a Spiel des Jahres, and if you don't know what the Spiel des Jahres are, it's reductionist to say it's like the Board Game of the Year awards, because the awards themselves skew a lot more to family-friendly games. I tend to think of Spiel des Jahres as like the family game of the year, or the best current family game of the year. So why do you think like Dorfromantik has been nominated then? What do you think?
That's a really interesting question, isn't it? I think it is a really accessible game in terms of, I think I'd happily play it with, family, different groups of people. I think it's something that's really accessible and light and easy to engage with. I think it's interesting, actually. I played one of the other games on the list, Next Station London from Matt Dunstan. Which is a totally different game. Like, it's not the same, it's a very different vibe. It's got that kind of, I guess, sort of solo plus thing again. That kind of, you're kind of, it's a flip and right. You're kind of exploring what's it called? Metro line of London, and you're trying to create your own map of train tracks. And it's got that sort of similar accessibility to it in some respects. And they're innovative. They do something different. They take something that there is from other kind of ideas of games. They feel familiar, but they're still fresh.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
Absolutely.
I always tend to, like, if I'm looking to get my family a game for Christmas, when I go down there for Christmas, I tend to look at the Spiel des Jahres list, because it tends to reach a broader demographic. There's a lot more table talk that tends to happen at Spiel des Jahres, really, than, say, more crunchy games. I'm not going to take Gloomhaven to my family for Christmas, because there wouldn't be a Christmas, say, for example. And it tend to be quite a safe bet. I could literally pretty much buy any game off the Spiel des Jahres list without knowing anything about it, and know that I'm going to have something of a good time with it, probably.
It's at least going to be accessible. No one's going to, in terms of, some things might hit and some things might miss, but at least I think they have a pretty good track record of picking games that are very, very accessible and opened up to a wide, broad audience in terms of interest and ability and engagement with the hobby. Like, as I tend to, like you're saying, Kris, I tend to look at that list and think about people getting into the hobby for the first time.
Yeah.
That's like a really good place to start, in terms of there'll be things that they're interested in, and certain IPs that they might already know about, or certain things that they've requested to their friends. So if they're kind of like taking those first leaps of like, what's something interesting I could just take a risk on, getting anything from those lists tends to be a pretty safe bet. It's an excellent resource in a way. Right, should we do Spider-Man?
You reckon we've got time to do Spider-Man?
Got time? I think so. Emily, you got time to sit around and listen to us talk about Spider-Man?
Only if you accept that I'm going to be really jealous, because I was meant to see it on Monday night and I couldn't. So I haven't had a chance yet, but I have seen the trailer and it looks amazing.
We're not going to spoil anything, for two reasons. One, because that's not fair, and two, I don't know if I wanted to, really.
Okay.
I mean, I could to a degree, but for me, what I love about Into the Spider-Verse and this film, Across the Spider-Verse, is just this giddy kind of spectacle, this assault on the senses, this kaleidoscope of colour, of all these different types of animation, and an absolutely banging soundtrack from Daniel Pemberton, who continues to be one of my favourite composers, who's just so eclectic. He's done this, he's done See How They Run, he's done Paddington 2. I mean, I think it's Paddington he's done. I mean, what an extraordinary kind of oeuvre. Very, very distinctive textures there. And it is just an extraordinary film. It's a long film.
I mean, you're saying that to the person who watched Lord of the Rings.
That's true, actually. But we didn't...
That is the exception to my rule.
So, broadly speaking, Miles Morales is trying to be Spider-Man without the presence of his multiverse mentors. In the previous film, he obviously was encountered by people from the multiverse. In this film, he's being pulled into the multiverse. I think that's right premise, isn't it, Sam?
Yeah, it's very much just a continuation of, I think, several months have passed since Into the Spider-Verse, or several years. there's been a decent chunk of time since the events of the previous film, and it very much picks up where it left off. And I think the opening 5-10 minutes of the film leaves you in no doubt that you're in for an experience like no other. Remembering what it was like watching Into the Spider-Verse the first time, just thinking like how unique and visceral that experience was. Somehow they've managed to top it, and somehow they've managed to make it more unique, and somehow they've managed to make it more visceral. And they've not necessarily done that by doubling down on what they did in Into the Spider-Verse. It's completely just to give you, and this might be a slight spoiler, but it won't be, because I promise you, Em, this will have you asking more questions than it will give you answers. But in the opening salvo of the film, there is a watercolor attacking a Leonardo da Vinci sketch inside a modern art museum, and and somehow the film isn't lost.
No.
It doesn't get lost in that concept.
Yeah.
And I don't know. There's part of me that really wants to know what the creative process is behind this film, because I just can't. I watch it and I remember it, and I just can't imagine how they've managed to make something that is so imaginative but yet so coherent, and
which is quite
relatable.
Telling, considering that Marvel's new phase is all about multiverse. They've had several films to try and explain the multiverse to us in a manner that is so far less coherent than one film, and you just get it. And it's literally, as you say, Sam, different art styles. When we watched Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, we walked out of that thinking that wasn't as mad as one would expect for a multiverse.
No.
This one does put its money where its mouth is, and this kind of beautiful kind of intertextuality starts to manifest, where these collisions of different forms of animation. There's a particular verse that is, I'm not going to spoil what it is, that was created here, was inspired by a teenager recreating the trailer, I think, for Into the Spider-Verse. And the producers liked it so much, they asked this kid to create a section where they cut to a world with that Spider-Man. So this kid animated it, and that's in this multi-million-dollar film. And,
that's
and really, as you say, Sam, the only way you can coherently create a multiverse is by having multiple voices. But as you say, but then again, there's this risk that you get a camel is a horse designed by a committee, where actually too many cooks and all of this sort of stuff. And it is bewildering the amount of different universes we encounter in this runtime, and still that kind of heart, that emotional core that is quite disarming, really, when you're watching animation. It's something you kind of see in that kind of lovely kind of familial sweetness in a Pixar film, but this feels grown up. And at times, not to say that animation can't be grown up, of course it can be, and there's lots of history of that, but given the fact that this is wonderful, rich roller coaster of a ride and the spectacle that is occurring throughout, you could forgive it for not perhaps paying due diligence to characterization because it wants you to get lost in the spectacle. It does both. And that is extraordinary, really. And I walked out thinking, okay, the film was too long, but I don't know what I would cut. I don't know how I could have made it shorter, because it is just an extraordinary event. Yeah.
The film is too long. I think you know where I stand on this, Chris. I don't think any film should be longer than 2 hours.
Really. Agreed.
And especially, I think, but saying that, I left the film wanting more.
It's a weird paradox.
I left the film going, I want more of this. It's because it is like having your head battered by a printer ink cartridge.
It's just leaking everywhere.
Yeah, and it is slightly exhausting. I do credit the direction that it's actually quite smart, and that it does the same thing that George Miller did with Mad Max Fury Road. Like, everything is dead center of the frame, and it's only when you start drifting off into the other sort of parts of the frame that you start noticing all of the other things like going on. Like, did you know, like, this will be quite interesting if you notice this when you go and see it, is that I swear, and please can you email me and vouch for me, when I swear, like, after the BBFC certificate, I swear, just for a brief second, a little speech bubble that said cough came up in the far right-hand corner of the screen before.
Yeah, I don't remember that. I remember the little editor notes you'd get in the bottom right-hand of a panel. You get in comics where that's their way of doing exposition.
I saw the editor notes.
I don't remember the cough.
But I don't know whether I imagined it, because it's just like completely blink or you miss it. But I swear I saw like a little, like, how you would see in a comic book. It's not quite a inside a speech bubble, but it's kind of like a literal sort of, if when someone coughs, you just get the word cough like flash up above their head, like it was, like it just looked like that. It just sprang up just for a second, then went back down, as if like a member of the audience coughed, and it was just like popping up in front of the screen. Like, please, can you watch it and just look out for that?
I will look. I'm going to look for that. I'm going to be specifically looking for that.
Like, I think the one thing that it left me with was a slight mourning for the Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness film that we could have got, and I don't know where the next film is going to go. Like, I don't know how they're going to top it, or what they're going to do. I just can't. My imagination is not good enough. I just hope someone else's is.
It's that kid again. They'll just get him to come. But I'm having to recalibrate my imagination to try, because it feels like they're holding something back, but I can't imagine what they would be holding back for this third film in this. I suppose it's a trilogy. That's a thing, isn't it? Really, but it's not just more of the same. It builds on what it's had before, really. So I think you're in for an incredible ride.
Anyway, thank you so much for joining us on the show. It's been an absolute delight having you on, and I guess this is your chance now to tell us a bit about what Osprey have got coming up.
Yeah, of course. Well, firstly, I mean, it's been so much fun chatting with you guys, so thank you very much for having me on. What have we got coming up? So, you guys are already familiar with Undaunted, of course. And we have just released Undaunted Battle of Britain. Right. Which, if there hasn't been a copy winging its way to you, there will be shortly.
There is one here.
No pun intended, but nice.
I cannot wait.
What are we going to drink, Sam?
I feel like this is, I don't know. I feel like one of us has got to be drinking like a scotch, and the other one's drinking something out of a stein or something. Like, I feel like we're hardened we're hardened pilots.
Aces
in the skies. That's above Britain. Like, it feels like, in the same way that Memoir 44 like had that really, like, started off being really grounded and then became really audacious by doing stuff in the skies, and how battles can kind of become quite, I don't want to say ridiculous, but how they can come really like actiony and like visceral when you suddenly start introducing planes. I feel like Undaunted Battle of Britain has that same potential. But yeah, can't wait to play it.
I think the biggest kind of change in that respect is that, the idea of sort of constantly being moving when you're in the aircraft, and that having to maneuver and having to get back into position again it's really immersive. It's really good. I think it changes up Undaunted for people that love the system already, but it's also been a really interesting entry point for people. It's been really interested to hear what you think.
Oh no, look forward to playing it for our War Boys Day, Sam.
We will have a War Boys Day, and hopefully Em doesn't know what that is, so we don't have to explain.
The other one I will mention is General Orders, which is coming out in October, which is from the amazing Undaunted design duo David Thompson and Trevor Benjamin. But this time they are back with a worker placement war game, which has a sort of a level of abstraction. So you're not the troops on the ground, you're the commanders in the war room, and you are going to be moving your troops around the battlefield. It's 2-player, same sort of elegance of that original Undaunted system. But as I say, it's worker placement. It takes, I think, 25 minutes, 30 minutes to play. It's super quick, but really strategic. And I mean, we had a game of it yesterday, and I'm already obsessed, and I'm really looking forward to being able to mail those copies out to people, and everyone have a sort of imagine a totally different kind of Undaunted system that just brings something new to the table.
Wonderful. And that's October that's coming out.
That's October.
Wow.
Yeah.
Look forward to seeing that.
And then December, we have Sankore, the Pride of Mansa Musa, which is the sort of spiritual sequel to Merv, which you may remember from 2020.
Mm-hmm. I do remember,
So this is Fabio Lopiano again, but also with Mandela Fernandez Grandon. It's another interactive Euro, but it's actually a totally different setting. It's the University of Sankore in 14th century Timbuktu, and it's going to be around the idea of sort of building up this university and sort of taking classes, and it's the graphic design has been done by Ian O'Toole, the same as Merv, and it's just stunning. And yeah, so that's the end of the year. So we've got lots of fun things lined up.
Fantastic! Wow,
awesome! I cannot wait. Thanks again, Em. Right, I'm going to go and pour myself a rum and coke, I guess, because it matches my charming personality.
I'm going to see how much Dorfromantik costs to purchase.
Oh. All right, well, that'll do.
All right then.